No, 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 no. No, that's definitely not me. I mean, my parents had certain bones and they all lined up a certain way.
Yeah.
But it's never been something I take credit for.
Bo Derek, forever etched in the memory of millions for her role as Jenny Hanley in the film 10, was not only the embodiment of beauty and innocence, she was the dream that stirred an entire generation whenever they saw her on screen. For decades, she wore the crown of perfection, the title of Perfect 10 that the world celebrated. Yet it was also the title that cruelly stole her soul. Behind those legendary cornrow braids and the smile that enchanted millions lies a secret Hollywood has never revealed. What seemed like paradise turned into a gilded cage, where love and power intertwined so tightly that even her reflection no longer felt her own. And now, at 68, what storms still haunt her? Before we begin, if the beauty and strength of Bo Derek have ever touched your heart, leave a like as a quiet tribute to the woman who has lived her entire life between light and shadow. The most haunting chapters of Bo Derek's life didn't unfold beneath the glow of Hollywood cameras, but in the still, salt-soaked quiet of a small house in Long Beach, where silence wasn't peace. It was the sound of something slowly breaking. Born on November 20th, 1956, she entered a world split between glamour and isolation. Her mother, Norma, was a Hollywood makeup artist, beautiful, meticulous, and often elsewhere. Her father, Paul Collins, a Korean War veteran turned boat builder, was steady as the tide and just as distant. And by 1962, when Bo was 6, the tide had pulled them apart for good. A rupture that shattered the only foundation she had known. In the weeks that followed, the air inside the house grew heavy and still, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. She remembered the sound of her father's boots crossing the wooden floor. 1, 2, 3, and the soft click of the door closing behind him, gentle as a lie. He never came back. At night, she would crawl into her mother's bed just to feel where warmth used to be. The sheets were cold, but they were proof that love had once lived there. At school, she told her friends her father was away at sea, a story she told so many times she almost believed it. Pretending, she discovered, was easier than explaining. When her mother remarried Bobby Bass, a Hollywood stuntman who threw himself from burning cars for a living, danger replaced discipline. He lived for adrenaline. Bo learned to live in the silence that followed it. At dinner, they spoke of cameras, paychecks, and movie sets. Never of her. She discovered that being quiet made adults forget you faster. Some nights, she would sit by the window, counting headlights on the road, hoping one might stop. None ever did. The laughter of childhood faded into the rhythm of the waves outside, and the ocean became her confidant, the only thing vast enough to listen. I think I loved the ocean, she would later admit, because it never judged me. It never asked me to be perfect. By 1971, while other girls her age were falling in love, Bo was falling into the Pacific. She spent her days on the sand, salt burning her lips, wind tangling her hair, a surfboard taller than herself under her arm. The ocean became her teacher. Wild, cruel, forgiving. One evening, she walked into the surf until the water rose to her chest, the cold biting deep. For a moment, she thought how easy it would be to keep walking, to let the sea take her. But then a wave lifted her, and she realized she could float. It was there, in that lonely baptism of salt and silence, that Bo Derek began to rise. Every fracture, every quiet heartbreak was already forging the steel beneath her beauty, shaping the woman the world would one day call perfect. And as she stood on the shore, watching the tide erase her footprints, she didn't yet know that beyond that horizon, another kind of tide was waiting. One called Hollywood, where destiny would come wrapped in both light and shadow. It's cruel how the quiet after childhood can sound like fate calling your name. Bo Derek's next chapter began not with applause, but with the low hum of studio lights and the faint smell of hairspray, the kind her mother used every day while painting beauty onto other people's faces. The ocean girl from Long Beach, who once thought waves could fix anything, now stood under the artificial sun of Hollywood. It was 1973, and 16-year-old Mary Kathleen Collins still had sea salt crusted on her skin when her mother brought her to work at a film set. Cameras clicked, directors shouted, powder drifted in the air like dust over a dream. And somewhere in that noise, one man looked up and saw her. John Derek was 46, tall, tanned, a former actor turned photographer whose charm felt rehearsed yet irresistible. He already had a wife, television star Linda Evans, and a life that glittered with the kind of power Bo had only seen in magazines. When his eyes met hers, the air seemed to still. "That face belongs on film," he said, and though the words were meant for casting, they landed like a spell. No one had ever studied her that way before, as if she were not a person, but a possibility. He spoke softly, as artists do when they know the power of their voice. "You have something rare," he told her, "something no one can teach." He offered her a role in a film to be shot in Europe. Once Upon a Love. She said yes before she understood the price. Greece glimmered like a postcard. Whitewashed walls, wind-tossed olive trees, blue water that seemed to stretch into forever. She left California behind. School, friends, the last fragile outline of girlhood. On the island, under the relentless sun, he shaped every gesture she made. "Don't act," he said. "Just be." And she obeyed, because she wanted so badly to be worthy of the way he looked at her. The sea shimmered, the camera rolled, and for a while she believed she was free. But whispers traveled faster than the Aegean wind. By the time the final reel spun, the world had already rewritten her story. The married director and the teenage muse. The runaway girl. The scandal in the sun. Reporters camped outside her mother's house. Cameras that once promised beauty now hunted her. So he took her further, to Germany, away from the noise, the judgment, the law. "We're safer here," he told her. And she believed him, because she still wanted to believe in something. In Germany, the rain never stopped. It streaked across the window of their small apartment, washing color out of everything. She learned to cook for two, to speak softly, to disappear. Her passport was still damp from the night they fled California, ink bleeding where her name had been written. She rehearsed lines for a movie no one would ever see. The money was gone, the reels locked away in a vault somewhere far from home. The love story they filmed was sealed in darkness, along with the girl who played it. Some nights she almost called her mother, but she never picked up the phone. "How do you explain that your dream has teeth?" She was 16, living like someone twice her age, already carrying the silence of women much older. When she finally stood again before the sea, the cold gray waters of northern Europe, she realized the ocean no longer sang to her. It mourned her. She had stepped through her first door, believing it led to freedom. But on the other side waited a cage, gilded and quiet. And somewhere, gathering dust in a forgotten studio, the reels of her first film lay still. Like the girl she once was, locked away, frame by frame. The world didn't forgive easily. When Bo Derek returned to America in 1976, whispers had already turned to headlines. And the girl who once chased waves now faced a storm of her own making. She was only 20, newly married to the man who had first put her in front of a camera. But that union had come at a cost. John Derek, nearly 30 years her senior, had left behind his wife, beloved actress Linda Evans, a woman Beau would later call grace itself. America turned its gaze from fascination to fury. The tabloids screamed, "Homewrecker." Directors stopped calling. Even as she smiled for photographs, she felt the weight of a scandal she was too young to understand. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," she would say softly decades later. But sometimes love doesn't look like salvation until it's too late. Under John's direction, Beau became his vision of purity in motion. He chose her wardrobe, her hair, even the way she exhaled on film. His camera adored her, sculpting sunlight on her skin until she looked less like a woman and more like an idea. The world began to follow suit. Magazine covers called her timeless, flawless, the dream. But behind the shimmer of his art lay a quieter truth. Every frame carried his signature, not hers. "He taught me how to be seen," Beau said years later, "but never how to speak." By the time she turned 23, her reflection belonged to everyone but herself. Then came 10, the film that turned a quiet muse into an immortal icon. It was 1979. Blake Edwards, searching for a woman the camera could fall in love with before it even moved, found her. Beau walked into the audition barefoot, sun-kissed, apologizing for wasting his time. Minutes later, she walked out, forever changed. When the movie opened, the world erupted. Her cornrow braids sparked both fascination and fury. Her slow-motion run along the Mexican shore became a symbol of beauty itself. 10 earned over $74 million, and Beau Derek became the perfect 10, the unreachable standard of an entire decade. But fame is a mirror that always takes more than it gives. "I didn't know if they loved me," she admitted, "or just the idea of me." The more perfect she appeared, the less human she felt. Even her triumph carried guilt, fame born from a man's loss and a woman's silence. The 1980s were supposed to be her reign, but they became her reckoning. A change of seasons faltered. Tarzan, the ape man, was condemned as soft porn in the jungle, though it opened #1 with $36 million. Then came Bolero, a film John promised would redefine sensuality. Instead, it destroyed them both. Critics called it a cinematic catastrophe. It made just $8 million and earned her the humiliation of being named Worst Actress of the Decade. That night, when they called her name at the Razzies, the audience laughed. She smiled anyway, the way you smile at a funeral when the body is your own. "At least they remembered me," she whispered. Each project left her emptier, her beauty sharper, her eyes quieter. "I thought we were making art," she said later, "but somewhere along the way, I became the art." By the 1990s, the goddess of the 1980s had grown tired of her pedestal. In Tommy Boy, 1995, she turned her own myth inside out, playing the glamorous stepmother with a wink so disarming it melted decades of ridicule. The audience laughed with her, not at her, and for the first time in years, it felt like freedom. "They called me the perfect 10, she would later reflect, but I was never chasing perfection. I was just learning to live with the scars. And in that revelation lay her quiet triumph. She had survived what beauty couldn't protect her from. Now, when the cameras flash, she no longer flinches. The woman who once embodied flawless desire has become something far rarer. Whole. Time softened what fame once hardened. The world crowned her for her perfection, but it was her fractures that made her unforgettable. And though the man who built her image continued shaping her story, what he left behind was no longer a portrait. It was a woman finally free enough to step out of the frame. The golden cage that once crowned her career had followed her home, gleaming, silent, and locked from the inside. What had begun as art had become a life rehearsed. In that house, nothing was ever out of place. Even love seemed lit from a single angle. John Derek, the man who once promised her freedom through film, now directed her every breath beyond it. He chose the clothes she wore, the words she spoke, the light that touched her face. He taught me how to be seen, Beau would say years later, but never how to speak. To the world, they were a fairy tale, beauty and her sculptor, muse and master. But inside those walls, time didn't move. It posed. Every meal, every silence, every glance was perfectly composed until she began to forget what spontaneity sounded like. She never argued with the headlines, she argued with herself. In the still rooms of Santa Ynez, where the scent of grass mixed with the faint chemical tang of old film and fixer fluid, remorse clung to the air like smoke that never cleared. Beau had learned that guilt isn't loud. It whispers over and over in the quiet hours between applause. She could glide through a Hollywood gala with perfect poise, every gesture choreographed, every smile practiced to the point of pain, and still feel something cracking beneath the silk. It wasn't the scandal itself that reopened the wound. It was the knowledge that somewhere, another woman, Linda Evans, luminous and kind, had once had to relearn how to breathe in a house that no longer echoed with her own laughter. Beau didn't wear that truth like armor. She wore it like a bruise that never healed. Some nights, she'd set 2 plates on the table by habit, then pause, her hands trembling, realizing that for her to be chosen, someone else had to disappear. Years later, when their paths crossed again, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Linda arrived at the same charity gala, dressed in white, her smile radiant, her composure almost cruel in its calm. The cameras loved the image. 2 beautiful women, unbroken, side by side. But under the lights, Beau felt her pulse stutter. That smile, gentle, unshaken, wasn't absolution. It was a mirror reflecting everything she had taken without meaning to. The crowd saw grace. Beau saw consequence. On the drive home, the valley stretched before her in silver and shadow, the headlights carving through fog like judgment. In the rearview mirror, she saw not the icon the world adored, but a woman hollowed out by her own choices. She whispered the words she had never been brave enough to say aloud. "I'm sorry for what my happiness cost you." But even alone, her voice faltered, dissolving before it reached the air, as if forgiveness itself refused to come from her lips. In private, she tried to make amends in ways no one would ever see. Anonymous donations, gentle gestures, compassion where once there had been silence. But guilt is a patient ghost. It doesn't leave just because you learn how to live with it. Sometimes, when the house was dark, and only the ticking of the old clock filled the hall, she would wonder if Linda had truly moved on, or if, somewhere, they were both still carrying the same fracture from opposite sides of the same love. "She didn't need to forgive me," Beau would later admit softly. Her grace was its own punishment. Beau Derek was never the villain the tabloids painted, nor the saint her defenders wished her to be. She was both, the muse and the mirror, the wound and the scar. She had lived through the kind of love that burns too brightly to last, leaving beauty on the surface and ash beneath. To be loved and to have hurt someone good, both were true and both were hers to bear. And perhaps that is why, when the applause finally faded and the lights dimmed, she didn't crumble. She simply exhaled, at last understanding that survival was not absolution, but it was, finally, peace. Bo and John never had children. Their love filled rooms that should have echoed with laughter, replaced instead by the low, endless hum of his editing machines. The house remained spotless, echoing with absence. At the end of the hall were two small rooms meant for guests, but she sometimes caught herself imagining them filled with laughter that never came. Instead, they stored reels of film, his of her. "We lived in our own world," she once said, and that was enough. Yet some nights, barefoot and sleepless, she would pass his editing room. The soft flicker of light would spill into the hallway as he replayed her image again and again. She would pause at the doorway, watching him watch her, realizing with a quiet ache that she had given life to his art, but none to her own. The sound of the film projector became the pulse of their marriage, steady, mechanical, endless. She had become both muse and mirror, existing only in the spaces where his imagination placed her. "Love began to feel like a role I could never stop playing," she reflected. And when the projector finally stopped, the silence felt unbearable. Years blurred together. She stood by him through the ridicule, through the films that flopped, through the laughter of critics who called her his creation. And when his health began to fail in the late 1990s, Bo stayed, nursing him as tenderly as she once obeyed him. The man who had once shaped every frame of her life now struggled to hold a glass of water. The house filled with the sound of oxygen, of footsteps in slippers, of devotion stripped of glamour. "He had always told me what to do," she said once, "but in the end, he only needed me to stay." When his heart finally gave out in May 1998, she held his hand until it grew still. The man who had built her legend was gone, and with him went the only world she had known since she was 16. That night, she wandered through their silent home, past the cameras, the portraits, the reels of film gathering dust. In the editing room, the machine still sat open, a half-finished scene frozen on the frame. For a moment, she almost reached out to turn it off, but didn't. "I thought I would feel free," she said later, "but I just felt empty." When morning came, she opened the curtains. The light fell differently now, warmer, gentler, no longer staged. For the first time, she realized she didn't know what to do with it. The woman the world once called perfect finally understood that perfection is just another kind of prison, polished, adored, but airless. She had spent half her life inside someone else's vision, loved deeply but never freely. And yet, even in loss, she refused bitterness. She spoke of John with tenderness, not regret. "He made me who I am," she said, "for better or worse." The world saw a muse who survived her maker. But those who listened closely heard something quieter, a woman learning to exist without direction, to love without guilt, to breathe her own air. Somewhere in that golden cage, the door had always been open. It just took loss for her to step through it. For 3 quiet years after John Derek's passing, Bo lived alone with her memories, until laughter returned in the most unexpected way. She hadn't been looking for it. She hadn't been looking for anyone. But grief has a way of softening even the walls we build around ourselves. In 2002, after years of saying no, she finally said yes to a blind date arranged by friends who refused to let her fade into solitude. He was John Corbett, 5 years younger, an actor with a soft voice and a smile that didn't reach for anything. She expected another polite dinner, another evening of small talk. Instead, She found a man who didn't fill the air with his own stories. He listened. He talked about dogs, about getting nervous before every roll, about growing tomatoes that never turned red. He didn't see me as Bo Derek, she said. He saw me as a person. For the first time in years, she wasn't being watched. She was being understood. That night, when she came home, the silence of the house didn't hurt as much. Somewhere between the past and the present, something small and fragile began to breathe again. Their love didn't burn, it settled. It grew not in grand gestures or headlines, but in the quiet repetition of days. He never asked her to be a symbol. He didn't direct her, didn't control her, didn't need her to be perfect. Instead, he made room for her laughter, her hesitations, her silences. They rode horses at dawn, cooked simple dinners, and fell asleep watching old westerns, the kind where no one needed saving. "He makes me laugh every day," she said once, "and after everything I've been through, that's really all I need." It wasn't the fairy tale the tabloids once imagined. It was something gentler, something real. With him, love wasn't a performance. It was a place to rest. "He gave me what no one else ever did," she reflected. Permission to simply exist. When people asked why they hadn't married, she'd smile. "We don't need a ceremony to feel committed." And for nearly 2 decades, that was enough. 2 souls who had already learned what it meant to lose everything and still choose tenderness. But love, when it's real, doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence. In 2020, after 18 years together, they quietly exchanged vows at home. No photographers, no scripts, no diamonds, just 2 people in their 60s saying yes to peace. "It just felt right," she said. "After all these years, it already was what it was supposed to be." On their ranch in California, time now moves gently. Mornings begin with the soft nickers of horses, afternoons with volunteering for veterans and rescued animals, evenings by the fire with coffee and laughter. The same woman who once lived in the blinding light of cameras now finds beauty in the ordinary. Mud on her boots, the weight of a sleeping dog across her lap, the sound of John's quiet humming from another room. "I don't chase perfection anymore," she said. "I just chase peace." And yet, even peace has its shadows. Bo and John never had children, not by choice, but by time's quiet design. Sometimes she would pause in the hallway, the house filled with the sound of wind and nothing else, and imagine what laughter might have sounded like there. But then she'd look at the animals she cared for, at the people she helped, at the world she still had, and understand. Motherhood isn't always about birth. It's about what you nurture. "I never became a mother," she once said, "but I think I still learned how to love like one." And perhaps that is the quiet miracle of her story. After decades of being shaped, photographed, adored, and judged, Bo Derek found a love that asked for nothing but honesty. The woman once worshipped as a perfect 10 now lives under no one's light but her own. Her story no longer ends in tragedy. It ends in stillness, in sunlight, in the tender truth that even after the fiercest storms, the heart never forgets how to begin again. Now, at 68, Bo Derek lives the kind of life that once seemed impossible for a woman who had known so much noise. The world that once judged her by the curve of her smile now sees her through a different lens, that of quiet strength, compassion, and grace. Her net worth today is estimated at around $40 million, a fortune built not from relentless hustle, but from decades of reinvention, resilience, and wisdom. Much of it stems from the films that made her a household name, her enduring brand work, and careful investments. But a part of her wealth also carries the quiet legacy of her late husband, John Derek. He left her not only memories and film reels, but also a foundation, both emotional and material, on which she would build her new life. Her home in Santa Ynez, California, is less a mansion than a sanctuary, a living portrait of serenity framed by the golden hills of the Central Coast. The property spans over 80 acres, a quiet empire of vineyards, oak groves, and horse pastures, where time seems to walk barefoot. At its heart stands her Spanish-style ranch house, nearly 5,000 square feet of sun-washed adobe and terracotta, with wide verandas and arching corridors that open toward the valley light. The courtyards bloom with lavender and wild roses, the air thick with the scent of hay and salt carried inland from the Pacific. Inside, there are no movie posters or framed magazine covers. Only photographs of horses mid-gallop, dogs asleep by the fire, and sunsets she once tried to capture on an old film camera. The rooms feel lived in, not staged. A leather armchair worn soft by years of reading. A long farmhouse table where friends and neighbors gather for dinner beneath hanging vines of bougainvillea. On one wall, there's a black and white portrait of John Derek, quietly tucked between two landscape paintings, not as an idol, but as a memory. The house itself reflects her soul, refined but unpretentious, built not to impress, but to endure. Out back, the stables house a dozen horses, many of them rescues, their stalls spotless, the air filled with soft whinnies and the rustle of hay. The barn opens into open paddocks, where she still rides at dawn, her hair loose, her laughter startling the morning doves from the fences. Her life now moves at the rhythm of the land. She owns several vehicles, though none are extravagant. A vintage silver Mercedes SL convertible she rarely drives, a Ford F-250 truck for hauling feed and supplies, and an electric SUV, she jokes, is the only thing in Hollywood that doesn't run on drama. The value of her ranch and assets combined is estimated to exceed $10 million, a significant part of her $40 million net worth. But to her, the land means more than the numbers. "It's not what it's worth," she once said. "It's what it gives back." The ranch sustains itself through grapes, through horses, through peace. Every morning, before the sun crests the hills, Bo steps out barefoot onto the dewy grass. She moves among her horses with quiet reverence, feeding them one by one, whispering their names as though reciting prayers. The dogs follow her faithfully, 3 German shepherds and 1 mischievous terrier who insists on leading the way. She spends her mornings here among creatures who ask for nothing but her gentleness. Her afternoons are spent writing, reading, and working on her Bo Derek pet care line, while the evenings end in front of a fire that smells faintly of oak and orange peel. The woman who once lived beneath spotlights now wakes to sunlight through open windows. No cameras, no scripts, only the soft hum of a life unrecorded. And in that quiet, surrounded by the land she's tended and the creatures she's saved, she's found something no fame could ever buy: the luxury of peace. Her fortune, while impressive, has never been her measure of success. In recent years, Bo has devoted a significant portion of her wealth to philanthropy, quietly funding programs that support veterans, animal rescue, and wildlife protection. Her Bo Derek Pet Care line donates profits to organizations that train and care for retired military service dogs, the silent heroes often forgotten after their final mission. She's also an active supporter of the Animal Welfare Institute and WildAid, fighting against wildlife trafficking and promoting humane care for all living creatures. Money only matters if it helps something breathe easier. she once said. In 2021, she donated more than $100,000 from her company's proceeds to veteran support causes, a gesture she described not as charity, but as gratitude. Though she has no children, her legacy is one of care. Her days are full, tending to her ranch, mentoring young women in the industry, advocating for animal rights, and championing causes often overlooked by Hollywood's bright glare. "I may not have raised children," she said, "but I've raised lives, the ones that depend on kindness." Friends describe her as grounded, genuine, and a little mischievous, still quick to laugh, still stubbornly independent. "She's the kind of woman," one longtime friend shared, "who will muck a stable in the morning and then host a fundraiser that night, and somehow look elegant doing both." If Bo Derek has a will, she keeps it private, as she does most things now. Close friends say her estate is meticulously arranged to ensure her ranch and her animal foundation continue long after she's gone. "I don't worry about legacy," she said in an interview. "I just want to leave something that keeps helping, even if no one remembers my name." That humility, once hidden under the label of Perfect 10, has become her true crown. Her beauty, still radiant, now carries time's signature. Softer lines, wiser eyes. She remains striking, not because she preserved youth, but because she embraced age without apology. She keeps her health through riding, yoga, and long walks through her property, preferring simplicity over spectacle. "I don't fight time," she said once with a laugh. "Time has given me everything I didn't have when I was young: peace, perspective, and the right people." Bo Derek's story is no longer about glamour or scandal. It's about grace, about what it means to survive what tries to define you, and to live beyond it. From the teenage girl shaped by a man's lens to the woman who built her own world from the ashes of fame, she has become something far rarer than beautiful. She has become whole, and perhaps that is the lesson her life leaves us with. That healing is not forgetting, but forgiving. That peace doesn't come from applause, but from understanding what truly matters when the lights fade. Her story isn't a lesson, it's a quiet reflection of what it means to live, to lose, and to begin again. Through every storm and silence, Bo Derek has shown that life doesn't stop asking beauty of us. It simply changes what beauty means. And sometimes, the truest strength isn't in rising above what broke you, but in learning how to live softly with it. If Bo's journey has stayed with you, let your like be a quiet nod of connection, a small moment of gratitude for the lives that remind us how to endure with dignity and love. From all of us at Golden American Stars, may your days be kind, your heart light, and your path filled with health, peace, and the quiet joy of knowing that no matter how fierce the storm, the heart always remembers how to find its way back to the light.